trying to get all the I's dotted, T's crossed in the technical arena. It's not working so well, but we're going to hopefully have everything connected up in the next few minutes. This is how the sausage gets made, though. There we go. Adam is off screen, but I can see him. He's over in at Frank's offices. We're gonna. What's gonna happen, Adam, is we're gonna kick off the show in about 10 minutes. We're gonna cut to the screen you saw a minute ago, and we're just gonna attempt the interview. If the audio doesn't come through, or if it's buffering, we're gonna have to try to reschedule another time. We're gonna give it our best shot at this time. So, and I don't have audio from him. Let me bring this in here real quick. Okay. Now we should be able to hear you, Adam. We're gonna try. We're gonna do a normal show start in about 5 to 10 minutes. We're gonna cut to this same screen, and we'll do our best to get the audio. It's just that from the connection you have, it's kind of buffering a lot. But
Can you hear me better? Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
So. Take that off the screen, and on my end, we're going to jump back to the 4-shot. And everybody here on my end, I'm going to jump over to show notes, and I think we're ready to cut a show. Everybody on my end ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Masada Yub in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
All right, and I am sorry. We're just now still getting bugs worked out, and I got to go back over here because I don't know what I'm supposed to say, even though I've said it 634 times, 624. Hey everybody, welcome to the Polite Society Podcast. My name is Paul Lathrop. We're recording this one on Monday, June the 13th, 2022.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show, we talk with Ohio Secretary of State Frank Larose about cleaning up voter rolls and about veterans in politics and public office.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about the era of assault weapons bans. Is it over?
And I'm Amanda Suffolk, and we're going to talk about the Senate making gun control agreements, but the team is made up of lame duck rhinos. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 624 of the Polite Society Podcast starts right now. Okay, we are back. It's Monday. That means another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. And so, as we normally do, I'm going to go around the horn, find out what everybody's been up to since the last time we recorded. Rob, what's been going on with you, man?
I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. I was on the Daily Bullet, and I carried every day. But pretty boring at my end of the country. How about you, John?
Well, I had fully intended to be here on last week's show, but my internet provider, Spectrum, had different ideas. It seems like it's been forever since I was last on. I did get to attend the NRA annual meeting, and I did get my Associates of Applied Sciences degree in Hunting and Shooting Sports Management. I really do think I was the oldest person to actually march at graduation. It is my intention, as things stand now, to attend GRPC at the end of September in Texas in person. I've been invited to speak. Whether it'll be in combination with a road trip around Texas, it's going to depend upon gas prices. Amanda?
Hey, John, before you go on, You mentioned that you felt a little bit of nostalgia. You wondered if that would be the last NRA annual meeting. You want to talk about why, or was that related to gas prices? What do you think?
No. It's probably related to the court battle. There was a lot of conversation about that from some of the people I spoke to down in Houston. The trial will probably, the Attorney General's trial will probably be somewhere January, February of 2023. Discovery ends November. And for all we know, the entire board, all the officers could be ditched, and who knows what's going to happen. It could be just that much up in the air. Otherwise, it will be in Indianapolis in April, I think.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
I'm hoping it still happens, and I am very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to take longer for them to modify the board and things than that. So here's where we are. So this week I had a Women's Day on the Range, which is one of our introduction to shooting programs that we do for women. So whether they've got a concealed carry, they want a concealed carry, they just want a gun, we answer questions and make ourselves available. The funny part was I encouraged them all to bring their own gun if they own one. And I had a table, literally a table full of Smith & Wesson EZs in both 9mm and .380. I had to take a picture because I've never seen that many together in one place. And since so many looked alike, I urged them all to take a picture of their serial numbers before they set them on the table. That's how many there were. So, but it was absolutely great. And then while I was at NRA, I got a Mission First Tactical holster for my 365, and I love it. And so I'm carrying every day with a Mission First Tactical holster. Paul, how about you?
Well, what I've done this week also has something to do with NRA. Susan won a car seat M9, and with that we purchased a Crimson Trace laser grip, and that has a holster, a custom Kydex holster that goes with that. So all three of those arrived on the same day, which was Tuesday, and we got those all put together and went out to the range and tested them. And they are, I will say, that combination is better than I am. It shoots, it's a nice shooting gun. And after my stroke, I'm as good with this gun now as I was before my stroke with my Glock, but I still think the gun can do better than I can. So I found my EDC gun, and the only thing I need now, I want some extended mags, because the gun still, it's got the Glock 43 problem. The gun, I'm showing my hand here, the gun comes to about there, and I get 2.5 fingers on it. I need the extended magazine to get a full grip on the gun. I'm not going to save our YouTube channel, I'm not going to show the gun on live air, but the gun, when I grip it, only comes to about there, and I need the extended magazine to go all the way. So that I did a little bit of work with my AR, and shared some evidence of that work to Facebook. Was extremely pleased with the work I did with my AR, and that's kind of what's been up to me. Been working very hard on putting AMCON together in September, and getting ready to. The other thing I've been doing is getting ready to go to Detroit the end of next month for Rick Ector's Women's Shooting Days, the last weekend of July, and I'm going to go help with that, and been putting that trip together. So that's kind of what's been up with me. So let's do this. Let's go ahead, and we're going to set this one aside for our first break. When we come back, Frank Larose is patiently waiting for us to get to him an interview. I think we may have all of the technical issues worked out. I hope we have, at least. And we will get to that right after we hear from the good folks at CNJFO. We'll be back for that right after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
Oops, I hit the wrong button. There we go.
Yay!
Welcome back to the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. This is our interview segment. Joining us today, the Ohio Secretary of State, Frank Larose. Frank, thanks for joining us today, man.
Hey, thanks, everybody. I enjoyed the conversation about some of the shooting you all have been able to do in the last week. I must say my range time lately has been suffering between my role as the Secretary of State, my job as a candidate working to win re-election, and then also my responsibility as a dad. I haven't been spending as much time on the range as I would normally do.
Well, and I want to, you are a man who, you are former military. You're a man who's very familiar with going to the range, right?
Yeah, I served on active duty for 10 years, including service with the 101st Airborne Division. And then I also had the chance to serve as an Army Green Beret, and I actually still do that as a reservist. So on some weekends, I get to be Sergeant First Class Larose instead of Secretary Larose. I look forward to those opportunities, and I serve with some of America's finest warriors. It's a great opportunity to continue serving in that capacity.
Well, one thing I want to start with, if I could, Mr. Larose, is you folks have just been through a primary, and going back a little over a year and a half ago, there was a presidential election. Nationwide, there was concern about the validity of elections, but I've never heard one peep out of Ohio about validity of elections. You folks have done a fantastic job of making sure your elections in Ohio are accurate and fair. Could you tell us a little bit about what you've gone through in Ohio to make sure that elections in Ohio are free and fair?
Well, absolutely. And, you know, one of the main things that we've done is follow our laws in the state of Ohio. And that shouldn't be a novel concept. We've not allowed activist groups to come in at the last minute and make changes. One of the biggest problems that occurs in other states is activist groups filing last minute lawsuits and effectively going around the state legislature to change the rules at the last minute. In the month of September alone, I had 5 different election-related lawsuits filed against me in 2020. We didn't settle them. We fought them. In some states, even with conservative secretaries of state, they sat down and cut a deal with the ACLU or whatever other group was filing these lawsuits. The problem with that is twofold. One, you shouldn't make election law at the courthouse. You should make it at the state house. But second, when you sit down and settle one of these lawsuits, it's like paying the hostage taker's ransom. And we all know that hostage takers only take more hostages when you pay the ransom. And so it's a really bad idea. We didn't do that in Ohio. But we also got prepared. And I think my team probably sometimes gets sick of my military wisdom and one-liners. But one of the things that I shared with them is that something that anybody that served in the armed forces has heard before, and that is that we sweat in training so that we don't bleed in battle. We sweat in training so we don't bleed in battle. It's a simple statement about preparation and doing the work ready to be ready when the action comes. In Ohio, we did our sweating throughout the summer of 2020 to make sure that our logistics were in place, to make sure that we were ready for the higher volume of early voters who we were going to see. We made sure that we had adequate poll workers. In some states, they didn't have enough poll workers. We ended up with an overabundance. That's because we worked hard to recruit them. We had 56,000 poll workers ready to open all 4,000 of our polling locations right on time on Election Day, but also because we have bipartisan elections administration in Ohio. And what that means is that it's both Republicans and Democrats that do this work together. Of course, each person is a member of a party, but they put, making sure the elections are fair and honest first and foremost. And one of those people is Amanda Suffolk. We're proud to have her as a Board of Elections member here in Portage County. And she does that job as the Portage County Republican chairman. She's got counterparts in every other county in Ohio from both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The bottom line is this. We let the voters make their voice heard in Ohio in an honest contest. When President Trump was asked about how different states run elections, this was on the Hannity show last year, President Trump said Ohio runs elections well. Jim Jordan, a well-known conservative congressman who's right here from Ohio, he held an event for me in D.C., and we sat on a panel together. He said that Ohio is the gold standard for elections administration, but we're not going to rest on that. We're going to keep working to make sure that we keep our elections honest and make it easy to vote and hard to cheat, which is exactly what we want in every state.
Secretary, part of that prep has to be anticipation of legal objections, in the sense that if you say this is how the vote is going to go, speak now or forever hold your peace, doesn't that, to what degree did that preclude people coming back later and saying, oh, wait, there's still ballots coming in, well, we want to ignore postmarks, or we'll just keep counting and have no defined period when we'll stop? How much was prep and legal prep a function of stopping that?
Yeah, quite a bit. Myself and the Attorney General were ready for this. Now, unfortunately, we have a history of this in Ohio. We have been the subject of massive national litigation for many years. As a swing state, we're kind of accustomed to that. And so we were ready. We had enough lawyers standing by, and we knew what they were going to try to do. It's crisis opportunism is the name that I gave it. It's folks saying, well, there's this global pandemic, so we should throw out everything we know about elections administration and ignore what our state law has said, in some cases for decades, and just change the rules at the last minute. We didn't allow that to happen. The other thing, and this is a little bit of tough love, and I spoke at the Freedom Works conference in Florida last year, and I said that on the GOP side, we need to be prepared at a national level as unified as the left is. I can tell you that they're all marching in lockstep on the left. When Eric Holder or Mark Elias says, hey, here's the target, everybody go get it, they all just fall in line. The lawyers from out of state come in and start filing their lawsuits. We haven't had necessarily that same kind of unity of effort on the right. And unfortunately, the RNC and the Trump campaign got a lot more interested in fighting these lawsuits after the election than they did before the election. Before the election is when you need to fight these bad ideas off. Once the election has been held and you're filing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday after the election to try to change things that have already happened, it's largely too late. You need to fight these dangerous ideas before the election, before people actually cast their ballots.
I want to get a comment in here real quick, and then I'll go to you, Amanda. George over on the YouTube side says, and why did that not come up? Let me send it again.
That's not the comment that George made.
No. One more time. No, it's not going. I don't know why. George says, can we contract out the California elections to the Ohio officials? That's something I'm sure you get on a regular basis. How can other states get more like Ohio, where it's not a question that the Ohio elections are fair and that if you voted in Ohio, your vote did count? How can other states get more like Ohio?
Yeah, Paul, unfortunately, there are efforts at the national level to go in the opposite direction. We've seen 4 different pieces of legislation that have made their way through the Congress and thankfully been stopped in the U.S. Senate thanks to a couple reasonable Democrats that have voted with us, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, who have helped us defeat these federal election takeovers. But they're full of all kinds of bad ideas, like empowering bureaucrats in D.C. to make decisions for how elections run in your state. But the easy way to understand these federal election takeovers that masquerade under all of these focus group names like the People Act and the Freedom to Vote bill and all these other things, they're not about freedom to vote. They're not about rights or anything like that. They're about empowering D.C. bureaucrats to be in charge of your elections. But really, what I've described it as is the Pelosi plan to Californify our elections. Nancy Pelosi wants every state to run their elections the way California does, which in many cases is the prime example of how not to do it. Here's what we're doing. We don't want the federal government to take over how elections are run. We want to have best practices from states like Ohio and others be implemented in those states by their state legislature. So I serve on the executive board of the Republican Secretaries of State Committee. We've worked to develop some of those best practice ideas. Heck, last year I testified in the Pennsylvania State Senate because the Keystone State knew that they were embarrassed and they wanted their buddies from the Buckeye State to come over and show them how it's done. I testified in the Pennsylvania State Legislature. I gave them a list of 6 items that they should implement in their state. Now, unfortunately, they haven't implemented those yet, and that was on display here just recently when they have struggled to get their U.S. Senate race wrapped up in a timely manner. But yeah, that's what it comes down to, is we need to get other states to work at their state legislative level to put good processes in place. And by the way, this is why people should pay attention to the Secretary of State's race. This is self-serving, I know that. But the average person probably doesn't follow the Secretary of State's race. If you're thinking about politics every day, and I hope for your own mental well-being you're not, but if you are, you're thinking about the governor's race or the U.S. Senate race or a congressional race, well, I can tell you who's thinking about the Secretary of State's race every day. Eric Holder, Mark Elias, all of these so-called masterminds on the far left, they want to take over SOS races. That's why they started a massive $15 million super PAC aimed at people like me. Well, each of your viewers in their home states need to pay attention to the Secretary of State's race and elect somebody who's going to be a responsible chief elections officer in their state. This race really matters.
Okay, so I want to just tell everybody, no, you can't have Frank Larose. He's ours. I'm keeping him. You can't have him. Now, if you want to interview him, you want to borrow him, you want to do something where you're benchmarking, okay, we'll share him. But other than that, so Frank, the question that I've got, and I know that a lot of our listeners have, is how can they have faith in the next election and the one after that? You know, there's so much of people pointing fingers and things. I mean, the fact that the U.S. population knows the name of the manufacturer of the voting machines is a thing, and then they want to know which one are you using. So how can everyone be assured that the voting that's taking place in their state is free and fair?
So a couple things. First of all, please do not miss the opportunity to vote because you're concerned about fraud in your state's elections. Elections are always determined by the people who participate. And so you shouldn't sit home and skip the election. That is a sure way to make sure that your voice isn't heard and to make sure somebody who doesn't share your values is going to win those elections. So do participate, but also get involved. We have the government that we deserve, right? And that includes elections administration. The most basic thing you can do is sign up to be a poll worker. Now, I know that both parties recruit poll watchers. That's an important function, I suppose, but it's right there in the name. All poll watchers can do is watch. And then if you see something you don't like, you can step outside and call the number they gave you and then try to get a lawyer to intervene or whatever else. What's better than being a poll watcher is being a poll worker, an election official, and they're needed in every state. In Ohio, like I told you, it normally takes 40 or 50,000 poll workers to run election day. Half of them are Republicans, half of them are Democrats. It's a long day, but you get paid for your time. And this is a real way to A, learn how elections work, and B, make sure that the rules are followed at your polling location. And it's, I think, a really fulfilling thing, too, when you go home on election night to know that you were part of making sure that a free and fair election happened in your community. Second, start working with your state legislature to pass common sense things. Listen, we don't want to make it hard to vote. We don't want to suppress the vote. That's not our objective. We just want to make sure that it's honest. We want to make sure that dead people are removed from the voter rolls. I do that on a monthly basis. We send a list to each county board of elections. This is a bill that I drafted when I was in the state legislature that gets the list from the Department of Health. There's a state agency whose job it is to tell us who is deceased, among other things. And then we get that list and we send it to the county boards of elections. And we say, remove these dead voters from the rolls this month. We also do an annual inspection of Ohio's voter rolls to make sure that only citizens are registered to vote. Again, pretty straightforward thing. So we get the citizenship list from our Department of Public Safety. We compare it against the voter registration list. And if there's somebody who is a non-citizen who somehow got registered to vote, we remove them from the rolls and potentially refer them for prosecution. Those are things that if your state's not doing it, you need to be doing. Also, be leery about some of the information that's out there. I hate to break this to you, and this is not news to anybody, but there's a lot of BS out there on the internet that's just not true. And there's a lot of wild conspiracy theories about secret algorithms and voting machines and all kinds of stuff. Folks, that is a shiny object that's taking your eye off of what you should be focusing on. Some of these really wild conspiracy theories are just not worth your time. But the work that we need to do is make sure that dead people are removed from the rolls, that non-citizens don't get registered, that we have bipartisan people running elections, and that we follow our laws in our states. Those are the things we should really be focused on.
Gerald over on the Facebook side asked a question. Catching persons stuffing ballot boxes ahead of time is difficult. Does Ohio have ballot boxes? And where I would like to go with that, every state has ballot boxes, but are there remote drop-off boxes in Ohio? Those are the ones that I think are most rife for fraud.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do when we're talking about this is prevent a thing called ballot harvesting. So let me first explain what ballot harvesting is. Some people call it ballot trafficking, which is actually a better way to describe it. And what ballot harvesting is when somebody other than you collects up your ballots and takes them to the Board of Elections. Or when it's really ugly is when they don't take them to the Board of Elections. And this is the scheme that you've seen, and I'm going to be very candid. This is a scheme that both Republicans and Democrats have been caught doing over the years. This is why we do not allow ballot harvesting in Ohio. The only people that can return your ballot to the Board of Elections under Ohio law is yourself, an immediate family member, or your postal carrier. And so what ballot harvesting has led to in some other states is when, say, a Republican political operative goes to a Democratic neighborhood and goes door to door and says, hey, give me your ballots, save a stamp, I'll deliver it to the board for you. And then because they knew that was a Democrat-leaning neighborhood, they throw them in the dumpster. Same thing can happen when a Democratic operative goes door to door in a Republican neighborhood and throws them in the dumpster. Now, in some states where they mail an absentee ballot to everybody, which is a really bad idea as far as I'm concerned, what ballot harvesting could do is give somebody a chance to get fraudulent ballots, forge signatures on it, and then take them to the drop box. And that's what you're concerned about in the scenario that you were mentioning there. So a couple things that we do to control against that in Ohio. We had some counties using ballot drop boxes, sort of 24-hour drop boxes, and we had some counties not. We had lawsuits potentially about this, some actual that were filed. And so the way that we settled this is we said you can use a 24/7 drop box, but only at the county board of elections. And it's required to be under 24/7 video surveillance. It's right there on the front door of the Board of Elections or at the site of the Board of Elections. It has to be emptied every day by a bipartisan team, meaning the Republican and the Democrat go out there and unlock it with two different keys, and then they empty it. But again, that 24/7 video surveillance is key. The other, and it's a convenience for somebody that works a third shift or whatever else that wants to stop by and drop off their ballot. Fine. But what we also do is that you have to prove your identity when you request your absentee ballot with your name, the last four of your social, your date of birth, address, signature match. And we always check those signatures and actually scrutinize them and look at those signatures to make sure they match the one on file. But that's just to get your ballot. When you get your ballot, you fill it out and mail it back, and then you have to authenticate with all of those same forms of identification when you send back your absentee ballot. So there's really two identity checks, one when you request the ballot, one when you send it back in. The other thing is this: Ohioans have the ability to track their ballot, just like you would do a package you order online, so you make sure that somebody doesn't steal it off your porch or whatever. So you can go to our website, voteohio.gov, and track your ballot to make sure that it's received by the Board of Elections. And once you know that it's in the safe custody of the Board of Elections, you can rest assured that your ballot's going to be counted and counted accurately.
Okay, so hey, Frank, we've got to run to a commercial break quick. Can you hang on, because we've got way more questions for you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Folks,
this portion
we'll
of the
right
Polite
back.
Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, we're back. This is the second interview segment with Frank Larose, the Ohio Secretary of State. This is a Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Frank, I want to go a little bit of a different direction, but before I go in that different direction, as long as we're talking about elections, is there anything else anybody wanted to bring up while we were talking with Frank about elections? John, it looks like you're ready to fire off, man.
Well, number one, as a North Carolinian, I applaud Ohio for you working with your Attorney General together. In North Carolina, that does not happen. The legislature and the Attorney General, different parties, Holder comes in, Elias comes in, etc. Do you have voter ID?
So what Ohio has John, what Ohio has required for 40 years or more is that you're required to show a government-issued photo ID. But if you don't have one, there are alternative documents you can use to prove your identity. And so that's what many other states have actually done over the years. In fact, the state of Texas passed something very similar to that about 4 years ago. I would be all for strengthening that and requiring strictly a photo ID, but there has to be some sort of backup plan for somebody that loses their ID or whatever else. States that haven't put a backup plan like that in place have it struck down by a court, and so we're not interested in those kind of exercises in futility. But the real focus needs to be on maintaining accurate voter rolls, keeping dead people off the rolls, keeping non-citizens off the voter rolls, etc.
Yeah, in North Carolina, we actually made it a constitutional amendment. It still has not been implemented due to lawsuits. Are there any counties in Ohio that are governed by the Voting Rights Act of '65?
So if you're talking about pre-clearance, no, none of our counties are under pre-clearance requirements that mostly had pertained in the past to southern states, but there had been litigation in the last few years about that I think cleared that up for those states that were under pre-clearance as well. We do have a couple states that are under requirements, under federal requirements to make, for example, bilingual voting materials available and that kind of thing. It adds a little extra cost to the process, but it's not unmanageable. Those are for areas where we have like a large Hispanic population who are U.S. citizens and that kind of thing. No, what we're on the lookout for is making sure that more onerous federal regulations don't come into play. We don't need the federal government telling us how to run elections here in Ohio.
Absolutely.
Paul, do you mind if I change the conversation slightly?
Take that as a go ahead.
I was muted. I'm sorry. Go for it, Rob.
Okay. Well, I went to your website and I don't see a business background, but you talk about, I'm going to call it, husbanding the paperwork burden that's placed on small business. When you incorporate, you often file paperwork with the Secretary of State. Could you talk to us about that, please?
Yeah, that's correct. There are two missions to this office. There are two reasons why we have a Secretary of State's office. We help people vote and run fair and honest elections, but the other side is our business services division. When somebody wants to begin that entrepreneurial journey of starting their own business, it starts at the Secretary of State's office. Now, for my family, that began 80 years ago when my great-grandfather, an Italian immigrant, came to this country with nothing but a dream and a work ethic and started his small business that's still in operation in Northeast Ohio and employs a few hundred people up there. And that journey starts for Ohioans really every day at our website. In 2020, we had a record-setting number of new business formations happen. 176,000 new businesses formed in Ohio in 2020. That number increased again in 2021 with 196,000 new businesses. Unfortunately, because of all the headwinds that we're facing right now, because of mismanagement in Washington, in my opinion, and inflation and trouble finding people that work and that kind of thing, we've seen a downturn in the last few months in new business formations. But it starts at this office. I've always viewed the ministerial role of processing articles of incorporation. That's the basics. It's got to be done quickly. It's got to be done accurately and low cost. In Ohio, we charge $99 to incorporate a new business. That's the lowest fee of any state in the Midwest. And we generally process those within 24 hours. There are some states, that are taking weeks or even months to process new business formations. We pride ourselves on doing it within 24 hours and doing it accurately. But those are just the basics. To use the football analogy, that's the blocking and tackling. That's the stuff you have to get right. I view this role as an opportunity to be an advocate for small businesses and to go over to the state legislature and fight for common sense things to streamline regulations, to keep taxes low so that Ohio can be a pro-business state where people want to grow their enterprise.
Are those applications filed online?
Most of them are, yeah. At our website, ohiosos.gov, it's a pretty easy website. We pride ourselves on that as well. In fact, we've gotten accolades for that website being an easy source for new business formations. We also have a customer service desk in Columbus where people can come and do it in person, and so a lot of options available there.
One of the things I think, Frank, I'm not a economy guy, so to speak. My political bent is gun rights. However, my personal belief is the more freedom a state offers, the better their economy does overall. My home state of South Dakota is huge on political freedom, and also economically we're doing pretty good. I think Ohio is trying to tracking that same route.
No, I agree entirely. Listen, the solution for what ails most things in society is human freedom, and the opportunity to determine how your money is going to be spent, how you're going to grow your business, to do it easily, to protect yourself and your family for that matter. I'm one that believes that we can solve our problems not through more government, more onerous government regulation in the heavy hand of government, but we can solve our problems through freedom-oriented solutions.
All right, then I do want to take one more turn here. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is you have a very impressive military record. You're a military veteran, and one of the things we discussed when we were going to have you come on is we have about 10% of the adult population, a little less than 10% of the adult population in the United States is veterans, and unfortunately, very few of them, when they finish their service to the country in the military, pick up service to their country through political offices. Is that something you would recommend to veterans as they're coming out of serving their country in the military to go ahead and serve politically?
No question about it. In the decade following World War II, there were close to 50% of people in public service were veterans. We need more of my fellow veterans to take that up. And first of all, one great qualification is that you've proven your loyalty to this country. You wrote a blank check to the defense of this nation and were willing to do whatever it takes to preserve and protect the Constitution of the United States. I also think that veterans tend to be pragmatic problem solvers, people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and work together to get things done. Particularly in my background as an Army Green Beret, I served in a lot of parts of the world where people had never met an American before. So I had to learn how to work with people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds and walks of life and how to solve problems in very austere environments. I think that experience matters. And I think that for all of us veterans, for those that served, recall that whether it was a few years ago or decades ago, you raised your right hand and you swore an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution, to defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'll remind you, that is a lifelong commitment. You promised to do that as long as you live. And whether your time in uniform is up or not, I'd ask my fellow veterans to continue looking for ways to keep that oath. Public service is a great way to do it. Even something simple like being a poll worker or volunteering with a local veterans group in your community, teaching children about patriotism and how to fold the flag correctly, volunteer with a local VFW post or a Boy Scout or Girl Scout troop, and talk about what it means to be an American. Those are all great ways for veterans to give back, but running for public office is an excellent one. And here's a standing offer. Certainly anybody in Ohio, but anywhere else, if there's a veteran that's interested in running for public office, contact me. I'm pretty easy to reach. My official email is just frank@ohiosos.gov. You can also find me on our political website, which is just franklarose.com. Look me up. I'd love to sit down with any of my fellow veterans and talk to them about the ups and downs of running for office, why it matters, and how to go about it.
I will say this as somebody that's held a political post, not an elected post in the Republican Party. One thing in South Dakota, one thing you have to have is a very thick skin. You're going to get people's honest opinions of you. So you've got to have a bit of a thick skin, but I'm guessing that's something the military gives you, issues you as well.
Yeah, I would hope so. If you're focused on the mission and you believe in what you're doing, then all the noise doesn't really matter. And I'm not saying that you need to listen to what the public has to say, but there are also trolls out there. Amanda's dealt with them in her role as a party chairman. There are people out there. My rule of thumb is if somebody doesn't even put their name on their social media post, for example, if they're posting anonymously, I'm not going to give them much thought. I have to own everything I do and put my name on it. And so, if you ignore the anonymous trolls out there, that gets you a long way towards focusing on the stuff that really matters.
Amen.
Well, there's a statement out there, and I know that they say that America's built on 3 boxes, and I think it's the soap box, the ammo box, and the voting box. And so I want to thank you for everything that you're doing in the voting, so that we don't have to go reach for the ammo box. But we'll continue on with this show in preparation should that call ever happen.
Absolutely. Our freedoms are crucial, and I don't know if there's a box that goes with it, but I would argue that a component of faith is an important part of our nation's greatness as well. The church box, I guess you would say.
So I think that's part of the soapbox. We're on it, talking about it. What do we stand for?
There you go.
Yes.
All right.
So anybody have any other question before we? Because Frank is actually at one of the county offices, and I'm sure that there's a semicircle of people all whispering right now, trying to be very quiet while he does this interview. So.
By the way, I would encourage you to check out a document that we've posted, voteohio.gov/secure. We put it all on a one-pager. These are the things that Ohio does, at least the highlights of the things that we do to protect the integrity of our elections. Voteohio.gov/secure. It's a very informative little infographic. And if your state's not doing those things, that's a good checklist of items that you want to encourage your state's election officer, your county elections officials to do those things. And we take this work very seriously because, Amanda, as you said so eloquently, when people don't trust that elections have consequences, when people don't trust that their voice can be heard through a free and fair election, then sometimes they turn to other means, and we never want to see that. Listen, I've been to places where people don't trust their elections, and they turn to violence in some cases, and we don't want to get to that. We want to be able to make our voice heard through the peaceful process of conducting elections. In that case, it's the very foundation of our way of life, and keeping our elections both accessible and honest is a crucial mission, and that's why I get excited to go to work every day and do this very important job for the people of Ohio.
I want to get Brooke, one of our regular viewers and commenters. Brooke on the Facebook side says everyone can do something, talking about running for office. She also followed up with, considering the thick skin comment, honesty can be rough. So
yeah.
Frank, I think we are going to go ahead and I know you've got things to get done yet tonight. We're going to let you go ahead and get your things done, but I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to spend time with us.
Hey, thanks everybody, and thank you for continuing to stand up for our crucial Second Amendment rights, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Folks, we are going to go ahead and step aside to break. When we come back, boy, have we got news about that Senate agreement that has come out. We're going to talk about that when we come back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by network president Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Welcome back to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Let's go ahead and Susan is honestly, she's recovering from a little bit of a stomach issue, so she's not here with us tonight. But the news, if you caught the bullet, which was about an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 45 minutes ago, you're going to hear a lot of the same news that you heard at the bullet Amanda and I did at 5 o'clock Central Time tonight. This past Sunday, the legacy media came out with a announcement on Sunday that there's an agreement. We're going to get gun control. And, yeah, well, there are 10 Republicans that got into a conversation with 10 Democrats led by Murphy out of New Jersey that did come to terms on some topics. And that's what they're calling an agreement. There's no bill that has been written so far. The 10, we do have a list of the 10 people who are in this agreement, so to speak. 4 of them are not running for re-election. They're either retiring or giving up their seat. The other 6, well, they're not up for re-election this year. They're not up for re-election at least for 2 years, and most of them for 4. And none of them are real. Most of them are what I would consider rhinos. But at any rate, for example, I'm going to give a few out here right now. Lindsey Graham is not up for re-election until 2026. Susan Collins out of Maine never really has been a Second Amendment supporter. She's not up for re-election until 2026. Mitt Romney, and we all know that he's never been a Second Amendment supporter. He's Utah, and he's not up for re-election until 2024. And then we got a pair of them out of North Carolina, John.
Yes. Burr's retiring, and Tom Tillis just got reelected in 2020.
Yeah.
But he's not up for re-election until 2026.
So, yeah. Amanda and I talked about this, and she said it very well on the bullet. These were hand-picked people that are either, hopefully, they're hoping that people forget by the time they come up for re-election, or they're on their way out anyway.
Yeah, there's nobody that's in this list that is up for re-election this time. 4 of them are retired or announced their retirement, announced they're not running for re-election. They're shifting to something else, the private sector, whatever. And, though a couple of our listeners are like, well, they really care about their legacy. Some of them are so squishy that this legacy does not have any meaning at all to them. I mean, and that's kind of where I would put Ohio's Rob Portman in that. If he's, I called him squishy before people called him rhinos, but yeah.
Yeah. I want to get this one up here real fast. Our good friend John Dean from Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. Cornyn is a slime ball.
There you go. That's sort of what Yehuda said, only a little more vehement. Yeah.
By the way, that's John's senator, so John gets a vote in this case. So does Yehuda.
Yeah, so does Yehuda. Yeah.
It may be in 4 years. Sorry, guys.
Yehuda is swearing that he's going to run for senator. You know what? I'm all for Yehuda for U.S. Senate.
Okay,
we're gonna need to send him a lot of money.
Yeah.
Amanda, you work in local politics. Do you get feedback, and is any of that feedback effective, when people in higher office embarrass people in the party farther down?
Yeah, there is some of that where the party. I mean, because you look at it, it's going to be so there's the county party, then there is, in our case, the Ohio, the RNC, or so the Ohio Republican Party, the ORP, and then the RNC, which is the national level. And so on the county level, it's amazing as to who cares, So on the state level, those people really care. The senators don't seem to have a whole lot of concern when it comes to like a county to county to county, because there's 88 of us in Ohio. The congressmen, because they're really only talking about 2 or 3, they care. And those congressmen really make an effort that if you're volunteering, you're working in one of the offices and you're there, they will make sure that they're talking to you. They get your opinion. If they see you at social things, they want that interaction, because they're looking for how does the interaction, how do you think, and how does that fit with what is going on and the other voters, because their whole goal is to get reelected. And they know that for everybody who says something to them, there's 100 people who are thinking it. So when you speak for 100 voters. And so it has a lot of weight. And if they see you at things, then you all of a sudden become 100 voters that are informed voters, 100 voters that are active voters. And that gives even more weight.
Well, Amanda, what I was wondering is, a campaign volunteer comes up to you and says, I've helped you before, but after what our so-called Republican senator did, I think maybe I should change my registration to independent. Does this comment die with you, or does anyone else hear or care?
Some of them get to hear. I mean, the unaffiliated or independents, really, that doesn't do anything. Because people get to switch back and forth, that they know that you will stick with the concepts that you believed in the first place. So if you vote on issues, then you're going to continue to vote on issues. You vote party line, you'll continue to vote party line. So that it really doesn't have that kind of a stand, unless it is when they walk up and they say, I'm going to actively work to get your opponent elected. Those are the words that run chills in their heart, is because they know all the work that you have done, and they know how hard it is to get volunteers. And for you to say, I'm going to actively work, and it really is in the primary. So you can not give up your ideals, and in the primary work on another candidate to replace them that still works under the ideals of what you believe in. And so the primaries are the spot where you upgrade your candidates, and then the general is when you really vote for the party ticket. So if you don't have candidates you like, it's because you failed in the primary.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Well, and Ohio had its primary, about 2 weeks ago?
Ohio's having 2 primaries.
Aha. Okay.
It's a hot, I don't know how many other states had this remapping issue, but we met past deadlines, and we could not get an agreement on the remapping. And when Frank Larose talked about, don't let lawsuits hold you hostage, they had negotiated on remapping to make it to where the Democrats have to agree with the maps as they are proposed. Not so the other party, let's just say, not the Democrats, but there's the party that's in power, and then there's the other party, and they have to agree, which means that we'll never get another 10-year map, because if you make a map that is, if you're on the D ticket or on the R ticket and you make a map, the other side's going to be like, no, that's not helping my candidates good enough. So no. So Ohio had a fight for maps, and we're 4 maps into it, and until they finally lock that down. And nobody's happy with the maps. 4 years from now, we will get new maps, which means that we will get new senators, we will get our new congressmen, we will get new state senators. So it's on the state level and the congressional level. The maps really have a whole lot of meaning in that aspect. And what that also does is that if your candidate doesn't believe that he's going to stick for more than 4 years in a place, he probably isn't going to campaign on the fringes. He's going to try to stay to the core of where he thinks that is. And so those people who live on the fringes, their vote does not have, their vote has as much value, but their voice in anticipation of something doesn't have as much value to the candidates. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And actually, we've been having the fight over redistricting here in North Carolina, and it really illustrates how important, in our case, our state Supreme Court is. The General Assembly came up with one map. It was approved. They got sued. They won in Court of Appeals, but the state Supreme Court has a 4-3 Democratic majority, and they voted along party lines that throw it out and have some independent master draw the lines. The key effect was, yes, we have a new congressman. We now have 14 districts. We should have picked up 2 more Republican seats. We're losing 2. The 2 that we should have picked up are going to go to Democrats through the redistricting process. And so we are fighting very strongly, both as Republicans and as gun rights supporters, to elect good people, good conservatives to our state Supreme Court. One of the guys running, actually, I met at the NRA's National Legal Seminar a few years ago and actually had a gun case before the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, he lost, but we know where he stands on guns.
Well, I think that, I know that this is a show primarily about the Second Amendment, but I really think that politics and the Second Amendment tie in so much that causing people to understand how this all works and what it means, because this is talking about how do we get the people that all of a sudden don't stand for us even when we want them to, those types of things. So additionally, Ohio's Supreme Court sided on the Democrat side because we actually had a Supreme Court justice who switched parties because they saw that the Republicans were in power, and in order to be able to be a Supreme Court justice, they had to run on the Republican ticket. They did. They won. Now they are age limited out and can go back to their true beliefs and their roots and don't have to wear the mask. And so it's been a painful process. But when Frank Larose says pay attention to the Secretary of State, we also need to pay attention to the Supreme Court, to the judges, because when these cases get heard, who do they get heard by? And we conservatives do not typically get to know who good judges are. If you're not a political junkie or not somebody who's in front of a judge a lot, you don't know who a good judge is. So how do you do that? And judges typically cannot run on party ticket. So you pick them based on what they said in a soundbite or the color of their sign that says "Pick me, elect me." And so we've got to do a better job of that. The other piece I wanted to cover was the gerrymandering of districts. And so everybody has this conversation, well, shouldn't it be easy, just pick them by county and then let it go at that? That's not how that works. There is actually there's a whole recipe, because they have to divide it by the number of voters so that each one of the districts has a max and a min that's in a range for the number of voters that's in that district. That's one thing. And they're supposed to have, if you have 54% Democrat vote in your state and 46% Republican, then when you pick these districts, you should have 54% that are primarily Democrat districts that Democrats are the majority, and 46 where the Republicans are the majority. That's kind of how that's supposed to be when they set those weird little districts up. They've got a range on that too, so they can take it to where it's a Democrat +2 or a Democrat +22. As a seat they'll never lose, or one that they have to work for. Depending on how strong their candidate is, they'll allow it to be a tighter race. But those are all things that are considered in this mapping that you're looking at when you're trying to find somebody so you're trying to find pro-gun candidates to get them to run. Do they even stand a chance in the area in which they live? All of that is in that mix.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Let's do this. I'm gonna go to break, but I want one more segment of news simply because we've got other things we need to talk about. And to be quite frank, I have to stand up. I've been sitting in this chair for now just over 2 hours, and my backside needs a break. So we're gonna go to break. We'll be back in just about a minute after we hear from JPFO. Right back, right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
And welcome back to the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. This is our second news segment. And what I want to talk about next is somewhat related to the gun control agreement that came for the Senate. And that is what is in this gun control, the topics that they have for the gun control agreement. And Amanda and I, again, about 2 hours ago now, we covered this. Some of the topics that are in there, I don't necessarily disagree with. One of the things they're pushing for is additional mental health resources. Telehealth investments in programs that increase access to mental and behavioral health services for youth and families in crisis remotely. I don't know how much of a help that will be, but I wouldn't be against funding for something like that or research into something like that. When in the Reagan administration, I don't often talk against who I like to call Saint Reagan, but one of the things Reagan did that I don't so much like is he pretty much tore apart the mental health care system in the United States. And since then, there's been a lot of people that have fallen through the cracks in the mental health arena. And so, as I wouldn't mind. Go ahead.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of us libertarians gave Ronald Reagan cover for that. There were some medical reports about, and in some cases, accurate reports that said institutional care was horrible. The care should be moved into local facilities so that family members could monitor the quality of it. And then we took part of that, we opened the doors, but we never completed with local healthcare, effective local healthcare. In many states, the largest emergency mental health treatment facility is typically the county jail. Because when the schizophrenic goes off his meds, they're stuck holding the bag. They can't hand him to the hospital. They'll say, hi, this guy's so violent, we can't contain him. You can take him to a state hospital or you can deal with him yourself. Wow, where to begin your comment? I'll let someone else take a bite before I go on.
Well, let's look at some of the other stuff. Some of the things in this that really And I've got the whole list up from. It's interesting. Neither Burr nor Tillis, my senators, put anything up on their Senate websites about what was in the agreement. I had to go to Chris Murphy's website to find it.
Right.
But there, money for red flag laws or gun confiscation orders. They're going to be pushing the states. We know that. Expanding the Lautenberg Act to ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriends. Yeah, that's really kind of... And you could just see a vengeful ex-girlfriend or boyfriend saying, I'm getting you're violent, I'm going to get a restraining order, even though they know it's going to prevent you from protecting yourself. And what I thought about was Carol Bound in New Jersey. The guy who killed her could have gotten a protection order against her to keep her from being, and even, we know what happened there.
Yes.
Funding for school safety resources. We know it's not going to go to FASTA programs.
No.
And
I wouldn't, if they used it to actually harden access to the schools, I wouldn't mind that. But I'm afraid when it gets to the local districts, money for security is going to go for cameras, and that's it. Cameras are great for recording what goes bad, but it doesn't prevent anything going bad.
Well, there's going to be penalties for straw purchase. It's
already illegal.
Already,
yeah.
This is double secret probation or something. Really?
Does that sound familiar, Amanda?
Yeah. So I think the other thing that they want to do is investment in children and family medical health. I mean, and I'm all for any of the mental health things that they want to do. I really am. I just want to make sure that it's not in the school. As you look right now, there are lawsuits left, right, and center where parents found out that the school took action on a child for something and never told the parents. So if you are in fear that this child is going to harm him or herself, and you do not tell the parents, you have to tell the parents. And so when you look at some of the counselors and what they hold to themselves instead of sharing as they're supposed to based on law, because their definition of the HIPAA laws or their personal interpretation of the HIPAA laws, I don't want to give them any more power. I mean, we're seeing the stories right now because there's so much stuff in the transgender, but that there are schools that are helping children do their gender identity switch without the parents at all. Those things cannot happen. These children do not belong to the school. They are, it's the parents' primary responsibility. And if you don't believe the parents are doing it, then go outside of the school and go to the legal. Just I do not want to see the counselors solely within the school and making these liberal decisions without the parents.
It's been posted on social media a million times, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat it here. If somebody is not if they're not mentally grown up enough to own a rifle until they're 21, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to pick their gender until they're 21.
How about not being able to vote?
Yeah.
Right.
Do you remember what did he dress himself up at? Oh, it was the Batman movie where a guy comes in and attacks people in Aurora, Colorado, I believe.
Yeah, Aurora, Colorado. Yep, the clown-haired murderer. Yep.
Right. Well, no, when he was in prison, he dyed his hair orange. Yeah. He was under psychiatric treatment. He said, "This is what I'm thinking," to his therapist, and it was a 3 decimals crazy litany, and she did not turn him into law enforcement. She
Correct.
is a mandatory reporter, and
Correct.
she skated. So
Correct.
if you tell me you were going to catch mental health problems, I'm sorry, there are holes in the bucket. Until we plug those holes, I don't trust you. We cannot scale up a bad system.
We will never catch all of them. Ever, ever, ever. We'll never catch them all.
No, but
that's not
the
point,
counselors, he had written a manifesto that the counselor had that said, I will murder these people.
Mm-hmm.
And here is how I will do it. And they're like, well, the HIPAA laws kept me from sharing that. No, that's not how they're supposed to work.
Yeah, we're never going to make a law to make everybody safe. The only way you're going to be safe is by taking responsibility for yourself and being armed everywhere you possibly can be. I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to get pulled off of YouTube.
Thank you.
Yeah. I spoke to a grandparent today whose grandson, who's 27, is schizophrenic. Because he has not physically attacked his mother, he's just been verbally abusive. They're having a hard time getting him into treatment, and so they're going to try to do a family intervention, but doing it with a private system where it's going to cost them $880 a day. And the grandmother's thinking, I'm going to dedicate $50,000 of my assets to this if need be. Whereas if the mental health system in that state had said, okay, verbal abuse is right up there with physical abuse, perhaps they could have gotten him on Medicaid, get him SSI, disability, whatever, and get him the treatment he absolutely needs.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as I've said, I wrote about this last night. All of these things coming out of Congress, the devil is going to be in the details.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, I get style points for this. We should have a Supreme Court report finding coming out soon, a decision that says
I thought it was going to happen today. I really did.
Yeah, you're thinking Bruin. No, this is the one from the EPA that says, no, agencies do not get to make law. If you want a law that says something, say it. Law is supposed to be made by the legislature. And John, I'm with you. Let's have them.
Yeah, Todd Vandermeide and I have been talking about another case, the American Health Association or Hospital Association versus Becerra, because it's going to deal strictly with Chevron deference. And that could literally be more important than Bruin.
Right.
If we can force ATF, the courts, to not cede power to ATF, is this a short-barreled rifle? Is this pistol grip? Whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Make them say, okay, well, this really is not a machine gun. Okay, your belt loop might be a bump stock, but it's not a machine gun.
Right. I think that there's a lot of cases right now in the Supreme Court that have impact that kind of tie to one another, even though one wouldn't think by their titles. And most of the tie-ins are to states' rights and government overreach. And so there's so much that you're waiting to see what happens and how they come out.
Well, and today we did not get a decision. Wednesday is the next decision day. And then the following Monday, following Monday is their holiday for Juneteenth. Yeah, so it is Wednesday this week, and then Tuesday and Wednesday the following week. So we'll see. And then Monday the week after that. But there's a whole lot of decisions to come. Sooner or later, they're going to be rapid firing these things.
They say that there's at one point I heard 30. Now they say that there's 20. So I don't know that in the last 2 days they come out with 10.
Before today, there was 29. Before today, and I did not keep track of how many were released. I just know I got a text. I got a text at about 11 o'clock that Bruin, Alex Uli texted me, who I had on backup, and I've got him. When Bruin is released, he's coming on the bullet, and he's given me that.
We had 5 today.
Okay.
Okay.
But I just got the text that Bruin was not released today, so.
So there's 24 more.
Yeah, that are before they shut it down. They've got 24 to release, and officially, I think there are 3 or 4 days left to release them in. So, I could actually let me look that up fast because we are way over time. But I'm gonna just. Yes, and I know my keyboard's making noise, but
you can tell you're like.
I'm trying to be quiet, but we have, believe it or not, we have 2 just left. We have 3 days. The 15th, the 21st, and the 27th are all that are listed as release dates now on SCOTUS blog. So we'll see. But I do expect it this month.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So it's
all right.
It's interesting.
Let's do this. Let's go ahead and we're going to go to our break, and I think we're going to make this our final break, and we're going to do a all-in-one. We're going to do the defensive gun use segment, and we're going to do what we're doing in media and shutting the show down all in one segment. So we're going to go to our final break, and we'll get to all that when we come back. Right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
Hi, welcome back to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Before we get into DGUs, I've got 2 comments I really want to get to. First one up is Gerald. He says, great point, Paul. I'd add if a person has changed their gender, they should be forced to be released by a doctor to buy a gun. There you go. And another one by Pete over at Gun Websites. This is interesting. And honestly, Pete, I don't know the answer to your question. He says, has there been any focus on how many issues the FBI deals with? What was the ratio solved, investigated, suspected, missed? I wouldn't even know about how to go about. To answer your question, I don't know. And I wouldn't even know how to go about investigating that, Pete.
No, when he means issues was that a typo? Did he mean potential mass murder tips that were investigated, or were there other? Did he have something else in mind?
FBI is very, very closed-mouthed about everything. You're going to have to get a FOIA and a lawyer or 20 to get anything out of the FBI.
Yeah,
and
the
it depends
FBI
on how
is.
you phrase the question.
The FBI has
How do you-
frozen a lot of people out when they don't like the research you're doing.
Yeah. So, all right, let me get over to show notes so I can read our disclaimer as soon as I scroll to the right part. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Susan's not here tonight. Who wants to take the Philly story?
I'll take Stockton.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and I'll do Philly. Recently, let me increase my font here because my old eyes are having problems seeing that.
That's exactly why I don't take one, because otherwise all you're going to see is one eyeball as I'm trying to read.
Recently, a mass shooting in Philadelphia made it to the national news following the Uvalde event. 34-year-old John Smith, not his real name, and an accomplice attacked Micah Towns, his real name. Smith fired at Towns, which led to Towns returning fire and killing Smith. It appears that Smith had an accomplice, and a third man, 18-year-old Jeff Davis, pulled out another gun and began firing into a nearby crowd. The sequence of the confrontation was not clear to police, and 3 more gunmen were involved. In the end, 3 were dead and 12 wounded. Davis was shot and wounded by police. Towns has not been charged because authorities said he was acting in self-defense. The accomplice who attached Towns with Jackson has been charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, aggravated assault, obstructing the administration of law, tampering with evidence, and related offenses. Davis has been charged with firearms crimes, aggravated assault of law enforcement officers. 2 other individuals have been charged with murder, and one of the 2 is also charged with aggravated assault, simple assault, and reckless endangerment of another person. The pair were taken into custody by U.S. Marshals in Richmond, Virginia. Philly Mayor Jim Kinney wants Towns thrown in jail for defending himself. Other members of the media are claiming that a good guy with a gun is a myth. Surprisingly, soft-on-crime DA Larry Krasner blasted the mayor, saying Towns acted in self-defense. Wow. I don't know that there's a lot we can go with there.
Well, these were not a bunch of Boy Scouts.
No.
Okay. So your laws have to work not in the best case, but in the messiest case. Okay, Philadelphia, you had a bunch of gang members who were released over and over by a DA until this was the result. You don't need more gun laws. You need a better DA. Somebody correct me, please.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to correct you. The other thing is, I mean, I've seen the pictures, crowds on, I guess it was a Saturday night or 1 in the morning, whatever. Don't go stupid places with stupid people doing stupid things. I avoid crowds. When I was in Houston at the NRA, where I parked, there was a bunch of nightclubs and stuff. I got out of there as quickly as I could and went back to my simple little hotel room, picked up something. I should have gone to Whataburger, but I didn't. But, I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be in those crowds because who knows?
There is now a near legendary trip to a barbecue joint that happened on Saturday night, I believe it was, at NRA that we, Charlie Cook, Amanda, and Rob, and I, and Susan, all piled into a pickup, and we were looking to go to a barbecue joint. Well, first one, yeah, that closed a couple hours before we got there. Second one, yeah, that neighborhood, there were 5 of us. I'm guessing all of us were armed. At the very least, Susan and I were, but we all decided, yeah, no, this is not the neighborhood. Yeah.
We didn't have enough guns in the truck. We'll just say it. So, yeah.
Yeah, even if you're armed, there are places you don't want to go, and that was one of them.
You know, but this fight, if it as it were, you know, looks like it was maybe the same gang, warring gangs. You know, don't mess with me. Don't, you know, that kind of a thing. And so it's one warring faction against another warring faction. And so it almost doesn't matter where they go once they decide that they're wearing a uniform and joining one of the teams. You know, the other team is going to hate you because you wear the colors of the offending team. And so, you know, this is that thing where your mom tells you that you need to pick your friends better.
Yeah.
It really is. You know, it could have been avoided a whole long time before this, but it is somebody willing to take action and do some gang mitigation.
Let me get this comment in here real quick. DJ Play Nice says, I go to club district straight away. I won't cave to fear. There's a big difference between caution and fear.
No, he's right.
Yeah. And we drove through the neighborhood. We just kept going.
That wasn't a club district, though. That was
no.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was.
I think it was the gang clubhouse. We'll just say, just keep on going.
Yeah. And DJ, I'm going to say, I'm certain there are places that you wouldn't go. Period. I mean, there's vibes you get, and I'm sure there are. Look, I'm gonna channel something that Kathy Jackson said a long time ago. Pay attention to your spidey sense. If something feels wrong, get out of there. Skedaddle.
Right.
Yeah, it's put there for a reason. Let's see here. What else we got? Where are we at on show notes? Let's go ahead and do that.
Stockton, California.
Yeah. Rob,
you want to do that or skip it, Paul? Okay. A 73-year-old man was a caregiver for a 93-year-old retired doctor. That was at the doctor's home in Stockton, California. The caretaker was fixing the television when he saw a shadowy figure in the doctor's backyard. The caregiver went outside. It was right around dusk, and he was confronted by a 38-year-old man who was bringing food, bedding, belongings into the backyard. The intruder pulled a gun. The caretaker did as well. The elderly man, a retired doctor, believes that both his life and the life of the caretaker were saved by his companion's actions. I think he had every right to protect himself and whoever else he's taking care of. It doesn't bother me at all that he stepped in. Information so far led officers to believe that the caretaker shot the man out of fear for his life. The district attorney said that the shooting appears to be justified in this case. Local police said that the intruder in the backyard was a homeless man who'd come into the backyard from a homeless encampment that was across the street in a city park.
Yep.
So he was just looking for a place to spread out and be on his own rather than in with the rest of the homeless encampment. Thought this backyard looked like a good place.
In my backyard? No.
As soon as somebody stepped out into the backyard, the homeless man pulled his gun. That's what started it all. As Rob says, it killed him back first.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's your Rob that says that.
Yes.
He's going to stay. Yeah.
I want to say, Rob, the 73-year-old caretaker for a 93-year-old guy, and the 73-year-old was pogoing?
No, 43-year-old.
Okay.
Was the caregiver. 93-year-old is the retired doctor who's been retired for a while. And how old? 38-year-old was the homeless
38.
guy.
Okay, well, 43-year-old has a pogo in California, in Stockton. That's...
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Now,
Saved his
remember,
life.
not all California is the same.
Right.
Stockton's in the Central Valley. You can probably, largely agricultural, you can get your carry permit there. I believe it's one of they're all technically may issue, but many of them say, okay, here are the magic words you need to tell me so that I'll give you a permit.
Moreover, he could be on his own property or property where he was allowed to be and carrying, so therefore he wasn't out on the public street. He was on private property.
John, the way California's laws read, and that's what I thought. I studied it when I lived in California. You can't walk to your mailbox unless it's fenced and the mailbox is on your property, because a stranger could walk down your driveway. Therefore, it's considered public access, and therefore you're carrying in public. If your backyard is fenced and gated, then you could carry in your backyard because the public is excluded. And then you go, if it was excluded, how come I had a homeless guy in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, let's do this. We're going to call that the end of DGUs. Let's go ahead and get to what's going on with our media. Rob, start with you as I always do. What's been going on at Slow Facts, and tell us what's going on with Self-Defense Gun Stories, man.
I put out another Self-Defense Gun Stories. Amanda, I think you're last up, aren't you? I'm trying to scrape together Ben Branham. I got to call him right back to say, Ben, quick, I need you this week. I did get a chance to write an article where it's called "The Power to Tax and Regulate Guns is the Power to Disarm Women and Minorities." Minority women in our inner cities are the fastest growing segment of new gun owners. God bless. What took you so long? But in addition, honest citizens use a firearm in self-defense almost 10 times for each single time that a criminal has a gun during the commission of a violent crime. We've seen Democrat representatives propose a 1,000% excise tax on firearms. That means your $500 gun would now cost you $5,500. Disarming the victim, particularly a woman who lives in one of our inner cities, gives a huge advantage to the criminals. And I wonder why this congressman wants more of us, particularly women and minorities in inner cities, living in fear. I think the answer is the fact that the elites can buy a security team, which most of us can't do. That, and we've seen huge campaign donations from anti-gun billionaires. My articles are up at Clash Daily, at AmmoLand, and at my blog, slowfacts.wordpress.com.
And if you follow Tom Gresham on Twitter, you saw that article got retweeted by Tom Gresham today.
Thank you, Tom. I noticed it on my website. I didn't know who published it. John, what's up at... Oh, is there something else?
No.
John, what's new at No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money?
Well, your your blog post reminded me when we were in Houston in 2013, we spoke to a guy that was working to raise money to get 12-gauge pump shotguns for women in the inner city. I can't think of the guy's name, but they were not fancy.
It was called the Armed Citizen Project.
Exactly. That's what it just reminded me of.
Yep.
Well, what's new at my blog? Well, first, even though it ended 2 weeks ago, I'd urge readers to read my series of posts regarding the NRA annual meeting. I've got a number of posts up, and they cover everything from the protesters were quite rude to the members' meeting. Now moving on to current news, we talked about this a little bit earlier. We know that 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans have been working on a bipartisan package of gun reforms. I'm using the media hype term here. It's not gun control, it's not gun safety anymore, it's gun reforms. Yeah. Some of the things dealing with funding for mental health are not that objectionable, while pushing the states to set up gun confiscation orders, aka red flag laws, should be a non-starter. The devil will be in the details. There are 100 million or more gun owners in the U.S., and we should have a lot of buying power. If we all say we aren't going to buy a product, let's say like Wild Turkey Bourbon, because of their association with Matthew McConaughey, it might impact sales. Gun control supporting CEOs need to remember that as well. Our good friend Liston Matthews sent me a list that he had come across, letters from a bunch of CEOs saying, we need to ban assault weapons, we need to do this, we need to do that. Now, many are companies nobody's ever heard of, but then there's stuff like Lyft or
Levi's.
DoorDash or whatever. Well, of course, Levi's. Yeah. So I can't tell other people what to do, but my choice is, as much as possible, I'm not buying products from these companies. There's plenty of other options. And in my case, there's plenty of other bourbon options than Wild Turkey, where Matthew McConaughey is their creative director. So that and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
All right. Amanda, you've got a show coming up Friday evening.
So Friday evening, Women for Gun Rights. I have Christy Titus and Pursue the Wild. And so if you've not had an opportunity to talk to her, she is amazing. And I'm going to actually actively work on recruiting her for the Polite Society podcast, because I was very, very impressed with her. And I'm recording a couple more amazing Women for Gun Rights coming up, so that'll be that. And this I am headed on Wednesday to Missouri for the DC Project team match. So it's really it's going to be cool, because on Friday I am doing Train the Teachers Day. So any of the teachers that they can get to sign up in Missouri, we're going to introduce to firearms in whatever manner they want to do that. This past Saturday I did it here, not Train the Teachers, but the same kind of thing. Somebody's got a concealed carry license or somebody wants a gun, and I start in the beginning and answer all the questions, and here's how bullets work, and here's how guns work, and here's how they come apart, and whatever their questions are, we morph the class into whatever it is to answer what they want out of it as we go. So those are always amazing things. So because I'm going to be traveling, then Rob Campbell is going to be in charge of Eye on the Target Radio on Sunday night. So if you want to be amused, watch him, because generally he's so laid back, and he gets uptight as uptight can be when he is in the driver's seat. And he's like, man, this is harder than it looks. Well, dude, yeah, I got that. But okay. So it makes me laugh, but we'll see what happens. So I'm going to miss next week's Polite Society podcast because I'll be on the road headed home. So.
All right. On my end, I'm going to encourage everybody to, for the rest of the week, 5 p.m. Central Time, be tuning into the Bullet, especially Wednesday when we're expecting more Supreme Court decisions, and Friday when we have Alex Uli going to be dropping by for the Friday Legal. But keep tuning in 5 p.m. Central Time for the Bullet this week, and noon on Saturday. I do not have oh, you know what? I may have a lineup. Let me go look at my calendar. I think this may be the week. Oh, yeah, you're going to want to tune in this weekend, because this coming Saturday is no, I'm sorry. This coming Saturday is the 18th. Yeah, it's Charlie Cook, Beth Alcazar, and Tony Simon this coming weekend.
Wow. That's a dream team.
That's worth tuning into because it makes you laugh.
Oh, last thing on the way out the door, one thing I did not mention that I got to do that is one of the high points in my shooting life. I got to go out on Monday. It was one of the days since I've been on the air last. I got to fire a full auto Glock Model 18. And you will get to hear about that on this coming Saturday's Weekly Bullet. So you may get a chance to see some of it too. At any rate, tune in for that, and I'll talk more about that this coming Saturday. So I think that's going to do it for us today. And there we are. That wraps up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. I'd like to thank Ohio Secretary of State Frank Larose for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time,
stay safe.
And be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
Okay, we have stopped recording. We are still live on the stream. I want to get this up. Dana says, do I need to increase the show notes font? I can do that on my end. It's just called increase. I can do that. It's Google. Google has I can increase it to 150 to even 200%. Google is old eyes adaptable. I mean, I can do it on my end. Don't worry about that, Dana. So, yeah, you're cool. Just keep doing what you do, bud. Thank you for what you do. Everybody else, man, we had way too many comments for me to get to them all, especially DJ Plain Ice. Thank you, everybody, for commenting. Again, especially DJ Plain Ice, so many of them. Want to get this one in fast as we're on our way out. That one's for you, Amanda. And he also wanted to remind everybody about the Capitol switchboard, 202-224-3121. And so... All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and shut the stream down. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Come join us next week, and come join me, 5 p.m. Central Time, the rest of the week for the Bullet. Thanks, everybody.